following subject matter is real and only intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised.
People are dead after deputies say a man went on a shooting rampage.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
I can tell you the scene out there is absolutely horrific.
Nobody knows where this individual may strike next.
This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, the host, and I'll tell you what, just for you listening today, this episode is absolutely free. No charge at all. But Joe, how much do the episodes normally cost? Good question. I'm glad you asked. $0. That's the normal cost. But today, just for you, free. Now don't tell people I gave it to you for free though, because I'll close up quicker than Kmart. Hey Joe, why are you asking yourself questions in a slightly different voice and pretending it's someone else? Because mind your business, that's why. I might send this episode intro to my therapist and just say, fix me, please. If I had a therapist, I probably need one. And if you'd like to be a regular part of the mental decay that is 10-Minute Murder, you can subscribe to 10-Minute Murder. It's super simple, just hit the subscribe button, and then that's pretty much it. You can also follow on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can just type in 10-Minute Murder, and it'll pop right up. And spooky season is continuing with this episode with Ruthie Mae McCoy and the true story behind Candyman. So if you're just now hearing about that, Candyman, the movie franchise, was based on an actual story. Have you ever heard about the girl who was one night hearing ominous dripping sounds coming from within her home? And she was scared, but her faithful dog was keeping her company under the bed, licking her hand off and on in comfort. Eventually, the girl went to investigate the noise, only to find her dog dead in the bathroom with a message written in blood. Humans can lick hands too. You've probably heard the story before. It's a pretty popular urban legend. Urban myths are spread by word of mouth, creating modern folklore. But while urban legends are mostly modern-day fairy tales, some of them have a true story behind them. One of these stories is the legend of Candyman, the hooked hand killer who can be summoned by saying his name 5 times into a mirror. While Candyman's tale, with its supernatural elements, is scary and it makes you avoid mirrors for a little while, the true story behind the urban legend is no less frightening. 52-year-old Ruthie McCoy didn't purposely summon a killer in her apartment in 1987, but the end result was the same. Ruthie Mae McCoy was born in Hughes, Arkansas in 1935, one of 8 children. When she was still a little girl, the family moved to Chicago's South Side in hopes of more prosperous life, like many black families did back then. But unfortunately, the big city was not exactly as they had dreamed about, and the family still struggled to get by. For Ruth, lack of money was not the only issue. The first sign of Ruth's mental illness began appearing when she was in her 20s. There were times when Ruth was talking to herself, and others when she would just burst out with anger unexpectedly, even cursing at strangers on the street. While it was clear everything was not all right with Ruth, relatives did not actually know the exact nature of her illness. In the 1950s, ignorance about mental health meant that extreme stigma and fear were surrounding it, and people turned more easily to religion to find answers. And so did Ruth's family. Vernita's father was not in the picture very long, and it was his desertion. While Ruth never got married, she had one child, Vernita, when she was 27. Vernita's father was not in the picture very long, and it was his desertion that caused Ruth to be bitter at men for the rest of her life. Due to her struggles with mental illness, Ruth was institutionalized several times, and Vernita had to stay with relatives. Everything was all right as long as Ruth took her medicine, but as it is usual with mental health patients, she often stopped taking them. As you can imagine, keeping a job was extremely difficult for Ruth. She was working on and off as a laundromat attendant and housekeeper, but was never able to hold it longer than a month or 2. As a result, Ruth and Vernita lived in Dearborn Homes, a public housing project located in the Bronzeville neighborhood. In 1983, as their home in Humboldt Park flooded, Ruth applied for emergency CHA housing. Ruth especially asked to be close to relatives and not be placed in a high-rise. But of course, Ruth was offered an apartment miles from the place that she asked for and on the 11th floor. Still, as there weren't really any other options, Ruth accepted the offer, and in May 1983, she moved into the apartment 1109 in Abbott Homes. Living conditions at this new building were far from ideal. Abbott Homes were part of Abla Homes, and if you were a resident of Abla Homes, you were more than twice as likely to be beaten, raped, or murdered than anyone else in the city. It tells a lot that Abla ranks 5th among CHA developments in violent crime. Families were poor, making no more than $4,527 a year. It's not a surprise that many tried to make more cash by any means, most of the time by selling drugs. When Ruth moved to the Abbott Homes, she was understandably in constant fear of either being mugged or burglarized. As a result, she had her lock changed by the CHA at least twice, and she sometimes toured the 11th floor hallway making sure doors of her neighbors were also locked. Being afraid 24/7 did not do well for Ruth's mental health issues. As a result, she didn't eat much, and her behavior became even more bizarre. In one instance, Ruth had to take her grandchild to a hospital, as 4-year-old Bobby had cuts on his face, arms, and leg. Ruth explained that he had fallen down some stairs, but she was behaving pretty weird, so the staff thought Ruth might have had something to do with the accident. As the Department of Children and Family Services was called, Ruth lost it. She had to be taken to the nearby Illinois State Psychiatric Institute, where she was diagnosed as a residual-type schizophrenic. However, there were no signs of Ruth actually abusing her grandchild. In the end, though, what actually happened seemed to work out well for Ruth. After the incident and after getting proper medication, her life started to look a little better. She gained weight and was dressing and acting more appropriately. Ruth even began to plan for the future, saying she wanted to become a nurse. For the first time in a while, it looked like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Unfortunately, all Ruth's dreams were shattered on the evening of April 22nd, 1987. That day, at 8:45, Chicago police got a 911 call. "I'm a resident at 1440 West 13th Street, and some people next door are totally tearing this down, you know." "What are they doing, ma'am? They want to break in?" the dispatcher asked. "Yeah, they threw the cabinet down. They want to come in through the bathroom." Even though the dispatcher was puzzled about what Ruth meant, he promised to send the police. The assignment was labeled as, quote, "disturbance with a neighbor," which might explain why it took a long time before police eventually arrived at the scene. Before 4 officers banged on Ruth's door around 10 minutes after 9, 2 neighbors had also called 911, reporting gunshots and yelling from 1109. As nobody answered the door, the police drove over to the project office to get a key. Unfortunately, and maybe because Ruth's previous request to change her locks, the key did not fit. And you would think at this point the police would try to break the door down or find an alternate way in. But that didn't happen. For reasons unknown, the police decided to not do anything else. And at 9:48 p.m., they left. Let me repeat that. There were 3 911 calls, one from Ruth herself stating that somebody was trying to enter her home, and 2 from neighbors saying they heard gunshots and shouting from the apartment. And because police could not easily open the door, they basically said, "Okay, cool, I guess we're done here." The following night, police got another phone call from Ruth's neighbor, Deborah. And Deborah said that she normally saw Ruth every morning and every evening, but that day, Ruth was nowhere to be seen. And as police had just visited Ruth's door the evening before, Deborah was extremely worried. Once again, a few police officers showed up with CHA security guards at Abbott Homes, and they stood outside Ruth's door. Apparently, one of the security guards mentioned there was a possibility of the tenant suing if the police broke in. And so everybody left again. And it seems like nobody thought about the very likely scenario that the tenant in question was most likely not alive anymore and would not be able to sue anybody. That was confirmed the next day. Once again, Deborah called, but to the project office this time. And this time the door was finally opened. About 1 p.m., a project official arrived at Ruth's door with a carpenter who drilled through the lock. Behind the door, they came upon a gruesome scene. Ruth was found in the bedroom, lying on her side in a pool of blood, a hand over her chest, wearing just one shoe. She had been shot 4 times with a medium caliber gun. One of the bullets sheared through her pulmonary vein. As angry as people could have been about this situation to police, who did not enter her apartment immediately, Ruth most likely would not have survived even if she had been taken quickly to a hospital. And as I'm sure you're already aware, a murder in a housing project is not going to garner widespread media coverage. But in Ruth's case, there is one detail that caused her death to make it to the Chicago Tribune: the fact that her killers had entered her apartment through her medicine cabinet. As Ruth had said in her 911 call, the intruders had thrown the cabinet down and climbed through the wall into her apartment. The news of the unusual break-in may have surprised the people in Chicago, but the truth is, people had been breaking into apartments via medicine cabinets for over a year before Ruth's murder. The real question is why nothing had been done about the safety hazard before. Unsurprisingly, the answer had been money. And money was also the motive behind the gruesome attack. 2 months before her death, Ruth received approval for supplemental security income. It not only raised her monthly income from $154 to $340, but SSI also paid retroactive to the date of the application. So the first check Ruth was sent was for $1,979. Ruth used that money for a few inexpensive things and planned to use the rest to get out of Abbott Homes. But unfortunately, people in her building noticed the purchases, and eventually, the money Ruth had meant to better her life got her killed. 2 men, Ted Turner, 18, and John Honduras, 21, were eventually arrested and charged with Ruth's murder, home invasion, armed robbery, armed violence, and residential burglary. However, due to lack of evidence, the charges were dropped after 2 years of the trial. It seemed Ruth's story was about to fade into oblivion. Then, just 5 years after Ruth's death in 1992, the movie Candyman was released and showed her gruesome death was far from forgotten. Events in the film are located in Cabrini Green Homes, just 15 minutes from where Ruth had been living. And even though the movie antagonist is a supernatural being, the fact he comes from behind the bathroom cabinet is not far from reality. And of course, in the movie, who was the first one to die by the Candyman's hook? Someone who was not taken seriously until they stumbled upon her dead body. A woman named Ruthie Jean. That's 10-Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. Thanks for joining, and this episode is submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. If you've listened this far and are not a subscriber of 10-Minute Murder, I encourage you to do that, because when you become a subscriber to 10-Minute Murder, you don't miss any episodes. They're automatically going to be sent to your listening device, if that's your phone or your computer. And some people I've noticed, because I get little stats on my thing, I don't know what it's called. Some people listen on Apple Watches, which I'm wearing an Apple Watch right this moment, and I've never, ever in my life listened to a single podcast on it. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently you guys are doing it in droves. And I've been missing out, and nobody told me. Hey, thanks. I'm out here listening with AirPods like some kind of caveman, and you guys are listening on your wrist. So wherever you listen, make sure you're subscribed to 10-Minute Murder. Also connect on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode, or just go to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Type 10-Minute Murder into the search bar, and it'll pop right up. And hey, Joe, why is your voice going out at the end of this episode? I don't know. I have no idea. Is it because I haven't drank a drop of water today? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. But I'm going to shut up while I still have a voice. Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Murder. Have a good night.